Welcome back to Stories from the Saloon, where we pull up a chair, pour a drink, and share the stories that shape the people behind the badge, the sirens, and the service. Today's guest is not only the host, but he's also the creator of this series. Please welcome Brian Sims. Our next guest has spent over 36 years in the fire service as either a firefighter and a lieutenant. He also grew up in the fire service underneath his dad, and he is one of our most requested subjects to be on the show. Please welcome Mr. Brian Sims. Thanks for joining us here today, Brian. This is a place where we get to know each person and hear the stories from their years in the fire service and or any other service that they may have been in. Stories from the saloon. Oh, there's plenty of them. Dude, what's up with the sunglasses? It's because I'm the star of the show. Why else wouldn't I wear sunglasses? So tell us, Brian. What did you do prior to getting in the fire service? Well, my very first job was, like everyone else, was in the fast food industry at McDonald's on Northwest Washington Boulevard. Ooh, did you have to wear one of those brown polyester uniforms? Yes, I most certainly did. And it always reeked of grease when you got home at night. I mean, it wasn't good for a juvenile just getting pimples, all that grease and everything. But yeah, I had to wear the brown polyester uniform. From there, I went on to cleaning the meat department at Evie's grocery store on Stahlhaber. There was one in Lindenwold and one on the west side. My first job out of high school was working for the McMullen cabinet making factory on Bob Meyer Road. I was one of 16 people laid off when I worked for the McMullen cabinet making factory. From there, after I got laid off, I worked for another cabinet making factory. This one was owned by Reinheimer from the City of Hamilton Fire Department. My dad knew him, and he kind of helped me get that job. And it wasn't long after that I ended up getting laid off from that as well. And it was around this time I also started, and I got on to the Liberty Township Fire Cadets Fire Explorer program through the Boy Scouts. And not too long after that, the City of Hamilton started up a program, and I was also on their program as well. And then after collecting unemployment for a little bit and becoming a real bum, my father calls me up one day and says, "Hey, we're going to go out to breakfast. I'll pick you up." So he picks me up, and we go to Bob Evans on Route 4 in Fairfield and have a pretty good breakfast. And then after breakfast, he pulls out of there, turns left on Sims Road. He pulls into this place and pulls into the parking lot. I kind of give him that look like, what are we doing here? And it was a nursing home, and he's like, and then he said, "Get your fucking ass in there and get a job." And that's exactly what I did. I walked my ass right in through that door, got an application, and I applied, and I got hired, and lo and behold, a couple of my friends from high school growing up, especially Kim Shoup, the one I consider my sister growing up because we spent a ton of time together. But she worked there as well. There was a couple other ones that worked there, so it was kind of almost like a high school reunion. But after I got hired there, I never did not have a job anymore. So tell us, what made you want to get into the fire service? Well, initially, I didn't want to get into the fire service. I pretty much lived that life, being a mascot and all kind of other things. I grew up in the fire service. Everything I did, live, breathe, everything was about the fire service. I had any toy you could get that was fire department related, I had it. And I even had stuff that wasn't even toys. I had real hose. I had real boots, helmets, set of my dad's spare gear. So while other kids were playing with G.I. Joes, I'm sitting here, seeing how quick I could put my gear on, pretending I'm riding tailboard, the glory days, putting out fires. And then after fire was over, I'd roll the hose up, put it back, and At the age of 7, my dad taught me CPR and then goes and films me so he could show the people he was teaching the adult classes that, hey, if my 7-year-old can do it, then, so can you. That's what I did when I was younger. My dad, back then, the hospitals, you could go into a room and get all your supplies, and we'd have brown paper bags full of stuff from the hospital. Back when I went to roller skating, every weekend, I'd come home with blisters, have blisters. Well, I didn't pop them in the traditional way. I grabbed a syringe and a needle and sucked the fluids out. I could tell you every bone that you had in your body, what it was named. So, when it came time to actually, deciding what I wanted to do, I really didn't want to, go into the fire service initially. Yeah, my junior and senior year of high school, I took a broadcasting arts program. It was probably one of the best courses I ever took when I was in high school. It was the one I got the best grades in. But I figured maybe I was going to go into that, maybe go into communications. Depending on where you went and worked in the communication field, you either could come out of a trade school or you needed a college degree. Well, I knew that wasn't happening because my grades weren't the best back in those days, so I kind of let that dream go. Did you ever try to follow in your father's footsteps and maybe try to get on Hamilton? Yeah, I initially tried to get into the Hamilton Fire Department, but my uncorrected vision wasn't good enough. And yeah, you're welcome for taking off the sunglasses. Anyways, yeah, I took the civil service test for a dispatcher because, back then I knew everything about the fire department. I knew where every station was. I knew what every unit, and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, I failed that test miserably. My buddy from Fire Explorers, Gary Evans, he got on the St. Clair Township Life Squad and told me to come out there and get a job. They wouldn't put me on because I had too many points on my driver's license from fucking around and finding out with speed. Can you explain that a little further? Yeah, I had 2 speeding tickets and a ticket for reckless operation. I even got a notice from the state that my license was getting ready to be taken away. Well, my first speeding ticket was going 50 and a 40, technically 50 and a 40. So on River Road, as you're approaching the old powerhouse area, there, it went down to 35 miles an hour. And I passed a car, so I sped up to pass a car. And by the time I got into the 35 miles an hour zone, Hamilton police pulled me over. It was Officer Ed Buns. Never forget that day. So I'm sitting there and looking forward, and right ahead of me, I noticed Bob Shoup's truck pull over right in front of us. Out of the passenger seat, my dad gets out and starts walking past me. And I'm thinking, at the time, well, maybe he'll get me out of this ticket. It'll be cool. But I'm pretty sure I'm dead. But he's getting closer to the window. My window's down. He's getting closer to the window, and he looks at me with that look and says, "Don't fucking move." And I was like, "Yes, sir." And I was petrified and excited at the same time because, there was a slight chance I might get out of that ticket. I thought maybe, just maybe, I'll get out of that ticket, but because, my dad knows everyone. The next thing you know, I've got not only my dad, but Officer Ed Buns, who pulled me over from Hamilton, at my window lecturing me about this ticket. What would you think if I have to tell your dad, you got it in a wreck, yada, yada, yada. Anyways, I was just sitting there just saying, can I just get my ticket and be on my way? Because I really didn't want to listen to it, but because I knew I was going to have to listen to a lot more when my dad got a hold of me. The next speeding ticket wasn't too terribly long after my first one, but I wasn't a juvenile anymore. I was doing 35 in a 25 on Milliken Avenue, and I just wasn't paying attention, and next thing you know, I got the PD in my rearview mirror, and he comes up to the window, typical license registration. He comes back with a ticket. He hands me the ticket, and he says, "Sorry, but I got a quota to make. Have a nice day." So the time I got my reckless op. I was coming back through Fairfield. I was with my high school buddy, David Carter, who always seemed to get me in trouble. He was in a different car. We were out in Mason, and we were coming back, and we were fucking around and coming down Route 4, and, we're kind of semi-pseudo racing and trying to see who can get ahead of each other. And he would block me, and I went into the turn lane to pass him, and then I somehow ended up running a red light. And that's when the Fairfield cop got me and pulled me over. Of course, Dave keeps going. He didn't get busted. He laughs about it later. He's like, I was trying to tell you that cop was up there. I'm like, yeah, I didn't see it. So after my first speeding ticket, when I went to juvenile court, the first one, the second one that I got, you just sent in a check for the speeding ticket. So on this one, I kindly asked the officer, I said, so, do I just send in a check for this one? He's like, oh, no, they want to see you in court. Your court date's on the ticket. And I'm like, oh, okay. And, the rest of that story is a little too long for this episode. So to answer your question is the reason why I got into the fire service. It was not your typical answer like, I like to help people. It was, I wanted to prove to my dad that I could do this job and hold down a job, period.
Hey, what are you doing?
Who, me?
No, the other Brian.
Just getting interviewed.
Hey, get out of here, you imposter. Okay, now that that's all done, babe, you can take the glasses off. It's not sunny in here.
Yeah, but I'm a star.
Yeah. Off.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. So, starting where y'all left off, what year were you in Fire Explorer in Liberty Township?
1988, right after high school. So, I got on Liberty Township as a fire explorer through the Boy Scouts program, and we would do trainings and everything just like the real firefighters. We'd train on fire stuff. Matter of fact, we actually got to go to the Monday night trainings and participate with the real firefighters, the volunteer firefighters back then. And our meetings and stuff were held out of the station on 747, just right by Milliken, which is no longer in service. But we would actually ride on the fire trucks over. We would meet there and then ride over to, I think it was Station 1 over off Yankee, which I think is Paul Stumpf Way or something like that now. But we would ride over there, and I got to ride with Charlie Caudell. That's where I first met Charlie Caudell. And I rode in the fire truck with it was an antique. It was parked in the back, and it was just a cab. There was nothing else. So it was just him and I riding in it. And I tell you what, I thought my dad said a lot of F words until I met Charlie Caudell.
Cousin like sailors. And that station was on 747?
747, just past Milliken.
So your first department was Fairfield Township in 1989, correct?
That's correct. After trial and error of trying to get on a few different places because of my driving record, I guess my dad was talking to the guys at his station at Company 5. The driver was Dave Downey, who was the chief of Fairfield Township, and my dad's squad partner was Jerry Pepple, who was assistant chief. And I guess he was talking about me trying to get on and stuff, and they said, yeah, have him come on up, we'll put him on. So I did just that. I went up and applied.
All right. Do you remember your first run there?
So yeah, the first run, I wasn't even on the department. I did what my dad said: go up there, talk to Dave. So I went up there, I talked to him, and he's like, yeah, we'll put you on Tuesday night at the trustee meeting, make sure you're there, so on and so forth. And we're out there talking in the bay. So while we're out there talking, a squad run comes in, the tones go off in the bay, and he's like, you want to go on this run? I'm like, oh, yeah, absolutely. So, he said, get in the back of that squad and just do what they tell you to do. So I jumped in the back of the squad. It was volunteer back then. You had to wait for all the squad crew to get there because they were coming from home. So I'm sitting there in the back waiting. And then the door flies open. This big old burly guy jumps in and looks at me and goes, who I'm wearing street clothes. He says, who the fuck are you? I'm like, well, I'm the new guy. So that was my introduction into Fairfield Township. And it was actually a run to Liberty Township, the Countryside Mobile Home Park for elderly gentlemen. I can't remember what exactly it was for.
Your first run after getting your certifications?
So after getting all my certifications and being a full-fledged dude, we had a run on Thule Road. It was for, I think it came in as a structure fire, but a guy had a wasp nest in his house on the outside, and he was trying to burn them out, and he caught the outside of the house on fire. So he had pretty much had it out by the time we got there. I don't even think we pulled a hose, but yeah, that was technically my first run after becoming certified.
That's cool. I mean, that's not something you see every day.
Nope.
So what was the first class you took, and who was your instructor?
The first class I took, they put me on the basic volunteer firefighter 36-hour course through D. Russell Lee, which is now Butler Tech. And my instructors were Assistant Chief John Vale from Liberty Township, who I knew from Explorers, and then Lieutenant Bob Connell from Westchester. And we kind of split between, having classes at Westchester and Liberty.
Yeah, I was, like I said, surprised that you haven't seen my mom there, because she was teaching at D. Russell Lee with Dale back then.
So I don't know, obviously, because I didn't do medic first. I went to EMT first, and my instructor was Roy Ellis, who was City Hamilton paramedic. So when I was going through that class, when I took my fire class, the books were those T&I. It wasn't IFSTA. That's how long ago it was. It was Technicians and Industries, I think. And the EMT side of it still had like modules, and some of them were thin, some of them were thick. It wasn't the Brady modules, so it was. Mm-hmm. So yeah, for both of those, it was kind of the same thing. But yeah, I was really, and we have a cat.
Well, hello.
Get out of here.
Just never know who's going to join us around here.
Right.
Good God.
So. Yeah, the fire class or the EMT class, I was trying not to, mess up because, my dad knows everybody in Hamilton. And of course, with Roy being in Hamilton, I didn't want to mess up. So it was kind of a struggle because I'm not very good at taking tests and stuff. So, yeah, it was something else. But I ended up getting, passing without a problem. So, yep. Had the basic EMT and my fire card, and I was ready to go.
So you started at Union Township, Westchester, almost a year after getting on Fairfield.
Yeah.
Fairfield Township.
Yes.
What made you decide to get on there?
So at that time, now I have all my certifications, and I'm running with guys that run for Union Township, Westchester, Springdale, Fairfield, and Fairfield Township, even though it was a good department, didn't get a lot of runs. Westchester, back then I didn't know too much about Hamilton County. I was a Butler County boy, so I didn't know too much about Hamilton County. So all you heard was Westchester going out. That's all you heard. So I'm like, I want to be that busy. So I went and applied, and spoke to Chief Goller, and he's like, you need to get this piece of paper signed by your chief. Basically, the paper says you're a member in good standing, and I said okay. And after I left, I'm like, I was dreading getting that paper signed because at the time when I was hired, there was a policy for the volunteers that you could not work for another fire department while you were a volunteer there. And the people that was on the departments were grandfathered in at this point because of, from what I understand, the city of Fairfield was sending guys up to get their training, and then after they got their training, they would bolt. So in a way to prevent that they made that policy up. So with that in effect, I'm approaching Chief Downey at training, and I'm biting my lip. I'm like, oh, here we go. So I said, Chief, I said, kid, can I get you to sign this paper? He looks at it, throws it on the ground, and he says, you fucking know better. And I'm like, okay. And then, of course, Pepple was always there to smooth things over, and he's like, you should have known better, Brian. I'm like, well, I know. So I walk with my head down and back to Westchester. I go in, I'm having a meeting with Tony Goller. He kind of, I said, I can't get this signed by my chief. And he kind of has a little smirk on his face, and he goes, it's okay. We know the chief. And so they end up hiring me.
Now, did you stay with Fairfield?
Yeah, still stay with Fairfield. I was running with Fairfield Township volunteer, and I was running with Westchester part-time.
And along with the time you were listening and all you heard was Westchester and you wanted to do that, was there like guys that you worked with that were close that were on there as well?
Yeah, I mean, I used to run a couple different nights. One, I ran a squad night with Friday nights, and I ran with Doug Whitaker, who was on Westchester. So he was one that's like, yeah, come on out.
Well, there was another guy that you had.
Bill Knapp was on Westchester. I'm trying to think, because it intermingles of who I know, like Donnie Fugate,
yeah,
Charlie Caudill. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people work for Westchester. Kind of the same thing. Fast forward a little bit, a lot of people work for Springdale as well. So,
were you still working at the nursing home during this time?
So yeah, I had, if you remember the story, when the imposter Brian was interviewing me.
That guy.
My dad made me go in there and get that job. So I enjoyed that job. I was still working at the nursing home. I was working third shifts, and then I was also working, the two fire departments.
And how did your first fire go?
Yeah, my first fire was so I was at my dad's stepdad's birthday party on Greenwood Avenue in the east side of Hamilton, and we had just had Fairfield Township had just had a barn fire like a week before, and I missed it, and I was pissed because I hadn't had my first fire yet, true fire. So the tones went off. I'm at this birthday party. The tones went off for working fire, barn fire. So I immediately bolt out. I get in my car and I start, because Greenwood's not too far from.
Did you have one of those fancy volley lights?
Well, what would you consider fancy?
I mean, just threw it up on the top of your car and it went, woo.
No, it was up there permanently. It was a magnetic mount, but it was up there permanently. It was the double rotator with a white cutout. So, I mean, I guess it was kind of fancy. So, like with the wobulator siren. So,
okay.
Those of you volleys should know what that is. So, yeah, we couldn't hit our sirens until we got certain points around Hamilton. So, I'm coming up through the back way, Heaton Street, up to Fair Avenue, and the fire was up on the hill on Princeton Road, so Fair Avenue kind of runs parallel to it. So I'm not even thinking of anything of it. I'm driving, focusing on getting up there, and just a voice in my head says, man, if you look up to the left, you might see it. And I look up to the left, and I see the biggest fire I've ever seen in my life. It's like this barn was built in the 1800s. And there was heavy smoke pushing out of every eave, every spot of this huge barn. So I turn left, go up Hancock to go to the station. There goes the medic, or there goes the squad. There goes the engine. So I was pissed that I missed both of those. I'm like, here I am. I'm not too far from the station, and I missed it. So what happened was there was an officers meeting at Station 2 that day. So all the officers were on the squad and the engine. And I get up to the station, I get my gear, and I'm coming back out, get ready to put my gear in the car, and you can just see the huge column of smoke from the station. And of course that gets you excited. So I start heading up there, in my personal vehicle. And at this point, as I'm weeding my way up there, there's tons of people going because they could hear the sirens, they could see the smoke, and they were interested to see what was going on. So I pull up there and I pull down this long gravel driveway, and right where they had hit the hydrant and laid up the hill towards the barn. And Tim Fike was there. So Tim Fike he's at the hydrant and he sees me and he's like, "Hey, get over here." He's like, "Turn this hydrant on when they honk the horn for water." I'm like, "Okay." So I get my gear on real quick. I get over there. I'm standing by the hydrant waiting for him. And the whole time I'm looking up the hill at the barn on fire and waiting for them to say charge it. Finally, they blow the horns. I charge the hydrant up, which takes quite a few turns, and I start running up the driveway. I mean, it's a good at least 800 feet up the driveway. So I'm running up the driveway, and all of a sudden they're like, "Shut it down, shut it down." Apparently the 5-inch had came off.
Oh, shoot.
So I had to run back down, shut it back down, wait for them to get it hooked back up, and then call for water again. They call for water again. I turn it back on and start running up the driveway again. I get up to the top of the driveway, and there is a wire electric wire going across the top on two poles. And they're like, "Get back, because the electric line was on fire. It was getting ready to drop down. So I get back and kind of wait for it to drop down, and I head up there, and Jerry Pebbles was a bit of a screamer on scene. And I'm approaching the engine. He's looking at me. He's like, "Get that fucking hose and get around back." So I'm like, "All right, cool." I say, I grab the hose and I go,
all right, cool.
go to a fence, and without missing a beat, I hop the fence. I get the hose over, and as soon as I hop the fence, I'm in ankle-deep manure and mud because it was a pasture. And speaking of the pastures, as I was running up, I'm looking, there were some hay feeders out in this pasture, and there was cows back there, and the embers from the fire were falling like snow flakes. And one of the hay feeders was on fire, and the cows were still eating the hay. So, and so I'm back there, and of course the wind is coming my way. So I got the hose, and then Gary Wayne Tillery comes in behind me. I don't know where he came from. So we're throwing water, and we just got an 1 3/4, not even a 2.5. And it wasn't going to do anything to this fire because this was built with heavy timber and had probably about 30 rolls of hay in there. So we're throwing water, and the wind's coming towards us, and I'm just breathing the smoke in. And I said, "Hey, switch me." So I go behind him and bury my head in his shoulder, and then we'd switch, and he'd do the same. And then I'm like, I can't take it anymore. I need to go get an air pack. So I went back and got an air pack, and I put it on and went to take one breath, and I got really dizzy and damn near passed out. And Bill Gray Jr. saw me. He's like, "Hey, here, sit down for a second." And he sat me down. He's like, "Just take a breath." So I took like 2 or 3 breaths. I said, "All right." I didn't want to be the vagina. So I got up and went back. And Gary Wayne, he never did get a pack on. So after moving that linebacker and that mud and manure, I am wore out. I got my hands on my knees. Next thing you know, I got a hand grabbing me and pulling me. Said, "You're done." I'm like, okay. It was Gene Boyd. He was a squad captain. So he took me up. I had to take some of my stuff off, and he went and got me some oxygen. I'm not, I'm just sitting out like on the sideboard of the truck, and I'm sucking on some oxygen, and Chief Downey walks by. He takes one, looks at me, and says, "You fucking pussy." And I'm like, okay. Well, next thing you know, everybody else starts falling out. Another guy, Mark Bowdendrop, he actually got taken to the hospital. And Gary Wayne, who was with me, came up, and they're like, "Hey, man, you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm okay." starts throwing up all over the place.
Gross.
Yeah, it was a mess. I mean, we ended up getting the fire knocked down pretty much, but we were there for 2.5 days.
Yeah, that's what SCBAs are for.
Yeah.
Is that like a pussy thing?
Yeah.
Back then?
Back then it was. Iron lung.
It's no wonder everybody's dropping off with cancer.
Yeah.
Well, what department did you get onto next?
So I ended up switching from doing Butler County to doing Springdale, City of Springdale. Of course, again, working with all the guys, Union Township, Westchester, and Fairfield Township. They worked at Springdale too. They're like, "Hey, come on down," because at this point, I now have my intermediate. I am now an intermediate EMT, which you went EMT basic, EMT intermediate, and then EMT paramedic. So after a year's worth of EMT, I went and got my intermediate, and after a year of that, I went on and got my paramedic. So I'm now intermediate, and Fairfield Township was an intermediate squad, so I could use my skills there. Springdale was an intermediate squad as well, and then they had Mercy medics that did their medic stuff. We didn't have any medics that ran with us at Fairfield Township. Westchester had a medic unit, but they weren't advanced. They were just EMT and a medic first responder. So yeah, I went to Springdale, and at this point, after I got on Springdale, I left the nursing home and became basically a full-time mercenary, part-time firefighter.
That's what a lot of people did back then.
Yep.
So not on the nursing home, and then you had buddies that were on this department that you knew already?
Yeah, I mean, Randy Davenport, Brian Oliver, Charlie Cuddill was there too. I mean, there's too many names to name.
Yeah. So, and at this point, you were in EMT. What they say, EMT, AEMT now.
It was AI and P. Yeah. Actually, I think they had a D too, because you could D. I don't know. There was all kinds of things. It's changed so much throughout the years.
It has changed. During these years, did you ever try to get a full-time anywhere?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I tried multiple times. So obviously, I couldn't get on Hamilton because of my uncorrected vision. I tried to take the dispatcher's test, failed that miserably for Hamilton. I couldn't get on St. Clair Life Squad because of my driving record. I got on Fairfield Township and all them. So obviously, back then in Butler County, the biggest places to go get your full time was Hamilton, Middletown, and Westchester. But when you did that, you took a test with like 300 people for one position. So I took Middletown's test twice, and I took Westchester's test twice, scored like 25th and 26th. And even though I worked there part-time, I didn't even get an interview, but people beyond me did. They were very selective back in those days.
Well, yeah, they could be
back
then. You don't get away with much anymore. So that back then, all these departments had bigger tests, kind of like the city do now.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's 300 people for one position, So again, me not being a good test taker, my odds were pretty much against me. I was surprised I scored 25th and 26th on the Westchester test twice.
So you didn't get full time, but you were offered part time?
Not there. I ended up taking a little later on. I took a full time test for Forest Park. Mm-hmm. So obviously my buddy Randy Davenport was pretty much the guy that pretty much made my fire career. I pretty much followed him everywhere he was, except for the city of Fairfield. Although I did try to get on the city of Fairfield as well and got denied. So
you were denied?
Yes, I was denied. So my dad and the chief didn't get along there. So
Dad.
Yep. So I was kind of like got some secondhand information that he saw my application, said if it's anything like his dad, I'm not hiring him, and my application went straight to the trash. So.
Mike Sims.
So yeah, I applied for. I forgot I also applied for City of Fairfield as well, and so yeah. I mean, later on, I got. I went to took the test for Forest Park, and then I didn't get the full-time job, but they're like, hey, do you want part-time? I'm like, yeah. So I took that job because during my paramedic class, I did a lot of ride time there with my buddy Randy Davenport. So, and then I liked that place because they also did some good runs too.
Well, what made you decide to go paramedic?
Well, I mean, obviously you had to have from a paramedic to get a full-time job. Back then, you had to have it. I mean, there wasn't a lot of places that would send you. A lot of them required you to be paramedic. Like the places like Hamilton, Middletown, the big cities, you didn't have to be, but everywhere else, if you wanted a better shot, you needed to be a paramedic.
So, when you went to school, did anybody help you with that, or did you?
So yeah, and that was another big debacle, and this is where I started exiting Butler County altogether. So, Union Township, Westchester, put out a thing and said, "Hey, we're going to put 2 people through medic school to sign up." So I signed up, and it brought me in. They said, "Hey, we got 3 people that signed up. Whoever does the best on the pretest is who will pay for it," because you had to take a pretest to get in to see if you were dumb enough. So, I scored second, and I came in. And by this time, I mean, you kind of had to enroll to take the pretest.
Yeah.
So now that I scored second, now they're wanting the money for the class. So I went to Westchester and I said, hey, I scored second. I said, they're asking about the payment. And they said, well, we've never paid for a part-timer, and we're not going to start now. So they denied me. The other 2 were Brian Oliver and Dave Von Bargen, who not only were part-time.
Von Bargen?
Yeah.
I know that name.
They weren't only part-time, but they were also POCs. So for those of you who don't know, that's basically volunteer, paid on call. So they were also paid on call, and they really love the paid on call guys at Westchester. So yeah, I got screwed out of that. So I ended up having to pay for paramedic on my own.
Dave Von Bargen. I think I work with that man's wife.
Oh, I know you do.
Old TVB. So, how did you end up getting on Forest Park?
So I took paramedic school and passed. I did a lot of ride time there with Randy Davenport, and I liked the runs that they got and how busy they were. Because I like being busy. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes not doing anything for 24 hours is just as exhausting as being busy. So
I could get on board with that.
So yeah, I mean they were. Randy's like, hey, come on, get on. So I, like I said, I went and took the test, and I didn't get full time. Actually, the test that I took for full time, they hired Jim Smith and Alfie Jones. But I got hired part time.
Those are another names from the past. Mm-hmm. It's wild how our paths crossed in so many ways other than actually crossing paths.
Yep.
We know a lot of the same people. Well, I don't know. I don't think I know Davenport, though. Prior to leaving Fairfield and Union, what kind of hours were you working?
So back then, I was working. Fairfield Township had started part-time at this point. So they were volunteer and part-time. So I was running. You had to do your Monday night trainings. You had to do, I can't remember, a squad shift. I can't remember how many hours you had to do. So I was doing the Monday night trainings, a squad shift, and then I was doing part-time at Fairfield Township. I was doing part-time at Westchester and part-time at Springdale. Springdale was 12 hours every 4th day. Westchester was a sign-up. Fairfield Township was a sign-up. So I got to signing up on those departments, there was times sometimes I didn't even come home. And also at this time, I was in medic school. Yeah, so I was doing all those jobs and going to medic school.
No way. When I took medic school, I had to go part-time at a job. I was just part-time at one job.
Yeah, at that point, I was living in a trailer off Thule Road by the airport, so I could be closer to Fairfield Township to make more runs. And I'd just broken up with my girlfriend, and she had a bird that she left there. And my mom called me one day and said, "Brian, when's the last time you were at the house?" I'm like, "I don't know. It's been a few days." She goes, "Well, the bird's dead." So I'm like, "Well, throw it out." So I didn't want that damn thing anyway. So
cruel. Jeez. In 1996, Springfield Township formed from Northern Hills Fire Department, New Burlington Fire Department, and Edgemont Fire Department. What made you want to get on there?
Again, more runs. So I'm always chasing more runs. So I'm looking through, I think, the paper or anything. I saw the article that all those departments were going to be combining, and I was still a part-time mercenary. So I looked at my buddy Davenport. I said, "Hey, we got to get a job there." I said, because they're going places, and so both Randy and I applied and got on. So pretty much at this point, I had left Fairfield Township and Westchester. Like, this was like right as I was beginning my paramedic career. Because after, I was kind of had a bad taste in my mouth after I had got duped by Westchester. I paid for my own medic. I wasn't going to give them my medic services, so I left there. And Fairfield Township at the time didn't do any medic services. So with Springdale and Forest Park on the list, I kind of got out of Butler County and just went straight to Hamilton County. And then when I saw Springfield Township being formed, I'm like, well, they're going to be busy, going to be doing a lot of runs. It's a lot of area. So Davenport and I went, and we both got hired part-time.
So at this point, you guys are on Forest Park and Springfield Township.
So when I got hired at Forest Park part-time, it was kind of different because they allowed you to work 24/48s without benefits, which was illegal. So, but I wasn't complaining. So I worked there 24 hours, and then Davenport and I were on the same shift at Forest Park. We were on the same shift at Springdale. So we'd start at 6 a.m. at Forest Park, get off at 6 a.m. the next day. We'd go straight down Kemper Road to Springdale and do a 12-hour shift. And then, so I was basically, 36 hours on, 36 hours off. And on those 36 hours off, I picked up Springfield Township.
So you got your first full-time position at Forest Park in 1998. How'd that go?
So I applied part-time, and I applied full-time and didn't get the full-time job. That's when Alfie Jones and Jim Smith got hired full-time. But they offered me a part-time job, which I gladly accepted because I had already done paramedic ride time there with Randy Davenport. So I wanted to get a job because, again, I follow Randy wherever he went. So he was a very, very good teacher, instructor, and taught me a lot. So I wanted to, continue my time riding with him.
So prior to getting hired, the part-timers were working 24/48s without benefits. You said that.
So yeah, the part-time was working 24/48s without benefits, which is illegal, but I didn't care. I mean, I was getting to work a 24/48 schedule, which allowed me, because at that time I was still working Fairfield Township, like the very last part. I was working Fairfield Township, Springdale, and Forest Park. So I ended up was working for all 4 departments before I quit Fairfield Township in Westchester and just worked at Springdale and Forest Park.
So they first hired 6, yeah?
So full-time wise, so at the time, I was working Springfield Township and for part-time and part-time at Forest Park and Springdale. So we would get off, my buddy Randy and I would get off at Forest Park at 6 a.m., go straight to Springdale, work 12 hours. So we were basically working 36 on, 36 off. And then we picked up 12 hours together at Springfield on our 36 hours off. And that was our schedule. So when it came time for full time, a lot of the guys were like, "Hey, we want to be put into the union," and they were like, "No," but then we were like, "It's illegal what you're doing," so kind of had them. So they said, "Okay, we'll hire 6 down, 6 later." So we had to apply and everything and take a test. Now, mind you, I was still new there, and there was quite a few people there, so it wasn't like my spot was guaranteed. Mm-hmm. So I ended up having to beat a guy out named Sean Salmons. That's kind of who we figured that it was between him and I to get that last spot. I ended up beating him and got hired with Randy, and then we started working on Unit 3 with Jim Smith and, at the time, Kevin Benny. And it was kind of like, well, here you're working 24/48s on Unit 3. You come in the next shift to do the same thing, but you're full-time. So there was no big pomp and circumstance, fanfare.
So your Unit 3 people at that time were?
Yeah, it was, Jim Smith, Kevin Benny was the supervisor, and then Randy Davenport and I were the medics. And then there was like Aaron Schluter, Doug West, Doug Keck. There was a couple other ones that worked occasionally.
I know Doug's my big brother.
Doug West?
Yeah. We worked together on the truck for a while, and then
Sorry about that.
Oh, Doug. And then obviously we knew Aaron Schluter from the motorcycle club.
Yeah.
So.
A little bit later on, yes.
Yeah, it was a little bit later on, but yeah, well, actually, I think I met him when I took my class there at Forest Park.
Yeah.
So, which you were working
apparently
that day.
Yeah.
We were in class. And then in 2001, you were promoted to lieutenant of Unit 2.
So, yeah, ended up getting a chance to take the test. So, after Chief Stegman retired, they promoted Chief Brooks to chief, and the whole department was going to get restructured. There was shift supervisors instead of lieutenants and captains, and they're going to go away from them. So they said, okay, we're going to do a captain for each unit day, and a lieutenant for each unit day. So Chief Brooks put out a thing that says if you want to be a lieutenant, you have to take the captain's test, which we thought was kind of weird at the time because we don't want to be a captain. I'm going for a lieutenant, so we had to take the captain's test. Obviously, I didn't get captain, which I was fine with, and but they offered me the lieutenant's job, which was fantastic, and well, let me back up. So I didn't get the captain's position, and which was fine. So then when it came time to do the lieutenants, they're like, oh, yeah, we're going to do another test. We're like, why? We just went through a whole testing procedure. And now the lieutenants, who anybody wanted to be the lieutenants, now had to go through an entire other testing procedure, which was a pain. So basically had to take 2 different kind of testing
That
and
sounds super fun.
assessment centers for this one lieutenant spot, which got promoted to Unit 2 lieutenant.
And what captain got promoted to that?
So Danny James got Unit 2 captain, and that's who I was under. Carter Pittman was Unit 3, and at the time, Alfie Jones was captain of Unit 1.
Gotcha. And what made you leave your lieutenant's position with Forest Park for a full-time firefighter position with Springfield Township?
So everything was going pretty well with the lieutenants. I was still on part-time Springfield Township, and just prior to, I'll have to back up a little bit and tell this story. Randy and I applied for a supervisor's position at Springfield Township full-time because they had shift supervisors. They didn't have lieutenants. So they kind of like Forest Park. So we apply. We had to go through a testing procedure. Randy actually got the shift supervisor job. About the same time, I'm talking like a week later, we both got the full-time job at Forest Park. And I think he was a shift supervisor for one day and then accepted the full-time at Forest Park. And I stayed there part-time and then worked full-time with Randy. So, yeah. So going back, still working there part-time at Springfield Township. Chief Loninger was the chief at the time. And he was like, "Hey, man, come on over, man. We could use you full-time." He would always do that. He was a good, good one for, really, dangling carrots and telling you what you want to hear. He was a good man. But so after years of trying to get me to come over, I finally you know what? I think it's time for a switch. So I ended up taking Springfield Township's full-time test because Springfield Township, even though back then Forest Park covered parts of Springfield Township, Springfield Township, again, had better runs. It's like they saw everything, structure fire, stabbing, shootings, you name it, they had it. So I wanted to be part of that. I've always, from the moment I started at Springfield Township, I always felt like it was home, and ended up, I didn't want to leave the place that gave me the chance for full time and being an officer, but something told me it was time. So, and I did, and I left Forest Park and accepted the full time firefighter's position with Springfield Township.
And so, for the first time ever, you were at one department.
Yep. So I left. I obviously lost my part-time job because now I'm full-time there, and I quit Forest Park. I wasn't part-time there, so yeah, I was just full-time. It was weird. I went from working from 4 fire departments all the way down now to 1.
And that was 16 years you were doing multiple departments.
Yep.
So you lost how much money?
Oh, yeah. So obviously I lost my officer's pay, went back to a firefighter. I lost a part-time position, so it was well over $40,000 a year that I lost.
And some accumulated sick time?
I had over 800 hours of sick time at Forest Park. I had a few years of perfect attendance, and at that time you were not able to take sick time from a city to a township, and I lost all that.
Right, and seniority didn't carry over either.
No seniority. The only thing it carried over was my time in the pension.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, that's a good thing.
Yeah, at least there's that.
So how long did you remain working for just one department?
So I obviously, at this point, married. I got 2 kids, and I had plenty of time on my hand. So I went to, at the time, it was Applebee's. It's current day McAllister's. They're Fairfield Township. And I saw Chief Downey and a couple other guys eating lunch all there. And walked up and said hi to Chief Downey. He's like, "Hey, how's it going? You should come back out, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "Who's this guy that's being really nice?" I'm like, I'm used to stern Chief Downey, which at the time wasn't a problem.
Was this the same one that called you a pussy?
Yes, more than once. So, but that's just how it went back then, But it's like, he said, "Yeah, come back out," and I'm like, "Yeah." And my buddy Shane, who I got on the department, was still there. So I'm like, "You know what? I think I'm going to go back." So I went back and applied and got back on Fairfield Township.
And what year was that?
2007.
2007.
So in that year, it was a phenomenal year. Well, not phenomenal, but it was. I lost my mom to cancer. I got divorced, and I got the second job.
That's a big year.
That's a lot of changes.
That's a lot in a year. So, working in all these departments that you've worked at over the years and all these people that you've been on and off with knowing your dad, some of them knowing your dad. Like, what was your favorite chief that you ever worked with, and ever why?
So, I mean, that's a hard question. Easy to ask, but hard to answer.
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of, favorites on multiple levels. So, I really enjoy working for Chief Pasega at Springdale. He didn't make you feel like he was a superior kind of guy. You could walk in his office and bullshit about stuff. His door was always open.
Mm-hmm.
He'd always mess around with you as well, and he really made you feel kind of important because back then part-timers at Springdale. I mean, granted they held the department together, but they had all full-time. They were a big full-time department. So on that level, obviously, he was easy to talk to. Chief Downey, he was the guy who gave me my shot when no one else gave me a shot. He was very stern, but I came from that with my dad being stern,
Yeah.
so that was nothing to me. And he pushed you to know your job and know what you're doing, because by God, before he got to the scene, you better have your shit together and have things in place, or else you were going to hear it.
Yeah.
He did not have a problem putting you on Front Street, and that was, that made you want to do better and not do that. These days, it doesn't go that well.
Yeah, from my time on the department, that guy's name was Jim Miller, and he was my stepdad.
So, I mean, it's different level, like, Chief Deffridge at Westchester, you never saw him. He would come from the other side at Station 1 to get his coffee and wouldn't say a word. I mean, he talked to the full-timers and more of the volunteers, but he wouldn't talk to the part-timers very much. So, that's probably, again, it's kind of like different levels of favorite chief.
Right. No, I hear you. I only ever worked for two, so I only had two to choose from.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked for quite a few departments, so I've had quite a few, different ones, and each unique in their own special way.
Oh, true that. That's true. So was there an officer during all your time that you looked up to?
Captain Murphy was one that I always looked up to because he had some kind of Rolodex in his head that he could rattle off everything. He was
Like Captain Murphy from Springfield Township?
Yeah, the Captain Murphy from Springfield Township. So I first met Jim at Westchester, and he would come in and say, we had to write down in books at Westchester, like Sims on duty, 9 o'clock, washed vehicles. So one day he came in and wrote down Northern Hills burns another one, because that time he was Northern Hills.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he was always funny. So yeah, Jim, he would come in there and write, Northern Hills burns another one. One day he brought his gear in to wash, and it was just solid black. He had done a Marine fire school, and so I met Jim there, and then they had a guy pass away, Tim Amon, that they were doing a procession for. So I was working at Springdale that day. They said, "Hey, you're going to go cover squad for," at the time, Northern Hills. So me and George Brashear went up there. We were running the medic unit out of there. I don't even know if it was medic at that time. But, of course, I knew Jim. And, I'm looking at, back then you kind of like looked in like the gear racks and everything. And it's like, oh man, this dude's helmet's all melted and black. And back then they were trophies.
Right.
And every gear that was racked all were black, and because they saw fires. They saw a lot of fires back then. So we're covering for them during the funeral, and we get a run to at the time, it was Manor Care on Banning. Again, mind you, I know next to nothing about Springfield Township, Hamilton County, that far south. So we go on this run, and we're going on the run, we're going on the run, we're going on the run. I look at George, I'm like, where in the hell are we going? Because I'm used to being like Springdale's only like a mile square, you know. So I mean, this run it takes you almost at least 15 minutes to get to Banning from Winton Road. And he's like, oh yeah, it's out here, because he had ran with them before. So
you wouldn't even think that that's actually Springfield Township where it's
right.
at.
It has to go through so many chopped up districts.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I had that little interaction there, which got me more hooked into Springfield Township. But then when I started working there, it's like, Jim could just rattle off facts out of his head. Say, hey, what's the pound weight on a 4x4 crib? He can rattle all that stuff off. He was a good firefighter's officer. He would get in there and do it with the best of them. So I always liked Jim. I always looked up to Jim. So I mean, there was a few other officers that were pretty good back in the days, but yeah, I mean, I worked so long with Jim, so yeah, it's why I look up to Jim the most.
Yeah, it makes sense. What's your most memorable run you had?
Again, hard to boil down. Got so many.
I hear you.
I would probably have to say it was kind of like a tie between a couple different ones, and they were all auto accidents. My first one that I had was on 747 in Westchester, but I came there with Fairfield Township. I was running with Doug Whitaker, Fairfield Township. Matter of fact, we were at the Station 1 for training, and they called us in. It was it was raining out. It was in between Toddersville and Hamilton Mason on 747 in a slight bend. And then when we got there, it was a station wagon versus full-size van, head-on. And they're like, we walk up and they're like, hey, Mike Mays is saying, help my guys with the guy in the van.
Mike Mays.
Yeah. So we go over there, and it seemed like they had so many people over there taking care of this guy that they didn't need us. So we come back to the station wagon, and I heard Mays say, the three in the back haven't moved since I've been here. They're dead. Get them out. So we end up pulling those bodies out. There's 3 guys in the back, 2 guys in the front. Pulled those 3 dead bodies out of the back. And, we had that guy I told you that was vomiting from the fire. He was still new in the service. And one of the patrol handed him a body, and his head went back and looked him in the eye, and he was done. That messed him up. So we get those bodies out, and Doug Whitaker goes, get in the back. I need you to, back at the time, you get in the back, you stabilize the guy's head. So when I get in there, there's a station wagon that has those wheel wells, and they were filled with blood and rain, and there was a pair of false teeth sitting there. And so I grabbed the passenger's head was sitting on the shoulder of the driver. When we opened up the driver's door, the driver's chin was on the steering wheel, the bottom of the steering wheel, and the dashboard was up against his chest. That's how bad it was. And he said, I need you to feel for a pulse on the driver or passenger. So he was cold. I couldn't feel a pulse. I said, he's dead. So they got him out. The driver was still moaning. He was still alive. I'm in there while they're cutting the top of the roof off and everything. We get him out. We get him in our squad. We start heading to Mercy Fairfield. And I'm bagging him, and his face is all messed up. And every time I bag, blood's just splurting out everywhere. By the time we get to Mercy, there's a bunch of blood going back and forth in the back of the squad. And he says, listen to his lungs. As I'm listening to his lungs, he stopped breathing. So back then, Doug took a 18 gauge and just criked him. And he passed away. So all 5 guys in the station wagon passed away. So that was my first kind of most memorable. But the other 2 were I'm not even similar, but it was when I was in Forest Park. We had two boys that were in a car saw a fox ran across the road, and they swerved, went across 275 and got T-boned in the passenger side. And as soon as we were the first units there, Davenport and I, and there was a EMT from Indiana. He's like, if we get this guy out, we can work on the other guy. I took one look at the car. The car was in the shape of a crescent. And I said, what other guy? Because I looked in from what I could see. All I saw was one person, and I kind of moved him a little bit, and I could see the passenger. The passenger was pushed under the driver.
Oh, my gosh.
And I said, well, this guy's dead. He's got blood coming out of his ears, no pulse. I said, he's dead. And the guy's like, you can't do that. You can't call him. I'm like, yeah, I can, and I did. So we get him out, and we get the other guy out, start working on him, and we call for a helicopter, and we're getting him out, and we got him on the cot and everything, and as you do in trauma, you cut all the clothes off and everything.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I have no idea, but for some reason the guy had a hole in his underwear right where the tip of his thing was.
His thing,
and it was kind of sticking out. And matter of fact, not only was it sticking out, he started peeing.
Oh.
And it went from urine to blood.
Oh no, you got weed on?
And Chief Brooks was like, can somebody redirect that? I think we all looked at each other, and she like reached in and redirected it. So I mean, that just the amount of damage was on that one was amazing. It was just incredible. That's probably the worst one I'd seen up until a couple of years ago when I was at Fairfield Township. We had a double fatal, and it was pretty bad too. Just about as bad.
I don't think that the people realize how many of those we compartmentalize and put away and try to just not really remember.
Oh, well, yeah. No matter what I do, you can't do that.
Yeah, you can't.
You remember them. I mean, like I said, those are probably the most memorable ones, but there's obviously tons of other ones.
Absolutely. It's a lot of burdens that we carry when we do this. So now that you got all the seriousness out of the way, and I know that you've worked for multiple departments, and you guys are some jokesters around in those departments, especially when you work together for so many years. What was the best prank you saw or heard or during those years were a part of?
So, I mean, not only, obviously, for the 4 departments I worked at, I hear all the stories from my dad in Hamilton, too. So, Westchester was a bunch of pranksters. It was prank after prank after prank. Not so much at Fairfield Township or Springdale, but man, I tell you what, Westchester was nothing but pranks. There's just so many that would tie for the best one. I can't even begin to think of what the best one was. But Rick Prinz was the full-timer who's the chief of Westchester now. He was a full-timer at Station 2. Lieutenant Kreiner was a lieutenant at that station. And Rick was in charge of fire prevention stuff, so he was looking at doing a smoke detector blitz. So he was looking for a bulk set of batteries. And he asked Paul, he says, hey, you know where I can get a bunch of, buy bulk set of batteries? And without missing a beat, Paul goes, oh yeah, that's a USA Battery down on Route 4. And he's like, well, you know where that's at? And he's like, I don't know if it's in Fairfield or Springdale, because Route 4 goes all the way from Hamilton all over. So back then, there was no computers where you could look stuff up. But he starts looking through the yellow pages, he couldn't find it. And so he calls in. Paul goes, why don't you call information, see if they got the number? So Rick dials up information, and he's like, yeah, you could kind of hear him on the phone. Information? Yeah, I'm trying to look for the number for USA Battery on Route 4. And you could tell she's starting to look through things, and she goes, well, and she's asking him, is it, Springdale, Fairfield? And Rick goes, hey, Paul, is that Fairfield or Springdale? He's like, I don't know. I don't know where it's at. And he's like, try Fairfield. And you could tell she's like not finding anything. And he said, well, I guess maybe it's in, and Paul's like, I think maybe it's in Springdale. So he's like, how about Springdale? And she's looking at it. And then it was all of a sudden it hit him. He's like, Oh, never mind. And he knew at that time Paul was fucking with him, and he had him. So that was a good one. I mean, there was always the fall asleep in the chair. You wake up with salt in your hair, sugar in your, or soap in your crotch. You try to wash it off, and it'd be all sudsy. You couldn't take a dump in any of the bathrooms at Station 2 without getting messed with. Especially the bigger bathroom. You locked the door. They had the key. So they kept the siren that used to alert the volunteers. It was mounted on the top of the building. They got it down and hooked it up to 110 volt and mounted it on a piece of wood.
Yeah.
So you'd be in there taking a shit, and mind you, this bathroom is nothing but ceramic tile. So you'd be in there taking a shit. They'd unlock the door. They have the key. Unlock the door. They put it on the counter, which was right inside the door, which conveniently there was an outlet there. And they shut the lights off. They'd plug it in, and that thing would wind up, and it wouldn't wind down. It was like, and just continue to wail. And you're trying to hold your ears and wipe your ass just to get off. Luckily, the day they did it to me, it blew a fuse and it shut it off. So I was lucky there. But some other people weren't so lucky. So yeah, they did a lot of pranks there. Like one day they said, "Hey Sims, come out here. Come out back." So I come out back, and then when I come out there was a cop out there talking to one of the guys, and he's like, all over his radio I hear, "Comes back to a Brian K. Sims birth date, blah 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 blah," and I'm like, I get that look, and they're like, and I thought, oh shit, I forgot to renew my tags. And he's like, "Yeah, get them renewed." So, well, yeah, it was one thing after another there. Like Forest Park, there was a time when you go into the men's bathroom, there's a door that goes back. Here's the shower, and then you go past that. There's all the lockers. So I was getting ready to take a shower, and you can lock those doors, but yet you could still. It was a bathroom stall door, so you could get right underneath it. Mm-hmm. So Walt Cook was there. He's like, "Hey, leave those doors open. I gotta get something out of my locker." I'm like, "Okay." So I'm in the shower, taking a nice warm shower, and next thing you know, I got buckets of ice and water coming over the top on me, and I got had. So yeah, I mean, there's just a prank. There's a lot of good ones back in the days.
It seemed like we had a lot of videos of you at Fairfield doing.
Later on, yes. I mean, back when I was part-time there, when you're in that small of a station at Station 2 on Tylersville, you're pretty close. You got nowhere to go. You're pretty much forced to be with those guys. And it did create a camaraderie that was unlike any other, because in these bigger stations, you can go hide from people and not see them all day. You didn't have that chance at Fairfield Township. So, yeah, there was quite a few. The potato launcher, the BB gun. Yeah, I mean, there was quite a few things that were done there.
Something like duct tape on a shin.
Yep, duct tape around my face. Yeah, every day was something. Every day.
Yeah, some good times. Well, I think you covered everything, babe.
Yeah, I doubt it. I mean, it wasn't everything. It was just kind of a quick hit, basically.
Yeah, quick hit. You got it.
So, yeah. Gave the people what they wanted. This episode. I don't think they wanted this. They probably care less. So if you're still watching by this point, thanks for staying tuned in.
Yeah. You better watch them.
Hopefully we'll have some more people. I know my buddy Randy Davenport said he was going to come by. If not, I just put him on Front Street and dared him to. So we'll see. We'll see if there's any more.
You got a couple people you got planned to come by the Salty Dog. You better watch them all.
Threats of violence.
I'll get you.
All right. Well, we'll close it out with that one. Thanks for joining us. Have a good one.
Bye.